Hawaii Museums Association, and we're delighted that you're all here today. Sam, our host.
Sure, yeah. Hi, hello, I'm Sam Pratt, and I'm with Wiley Corporation. I've been on the board, maybe 15 to 20 years. I can't really, I was thinking about this morning, how long, I don't know. But I'm the board chair, the president, I'm just a volunteer. When Frank and Chucky contacted me, they wanted to come, and we said, sure, we'd love to have you. And then they said, and we're going to have a panel. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be the one, because we're currently in between executive directors. But we do have Julie McLeod over here. She's joining us. She's kind of our longtime employee and currently acting as our chief employee for the board. Welcome to Grove Farm Homestead.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Chucky Boy Chalk, the executive director of the Kauai Museum, and just privileged to be there and to serve the community. Thank you.
Fred Atkins with Grove Farm. I'm with Kelowna Plantation. We're kind of related here. And I'm the managing director. We've had it for 35 years.
Aloha, good morning. I'm Thomas Dalbert. I'm executive director of the Friends of Kauai Wildlife Refuges. So we manage the visitor center and nature store out at Kilauea Point, historically one of the most visited places on the island, and sort of a little museum experience out there as well that we're proud to support, and pleased to be among the conversation of how we serve our island here today. So nice to meet you.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Salmai, and I'm president of the Hawaiian Museums Association. I'm also an employee at Hawaiian Mission House's Historic Site and Archives in Oahu as deputy director of administration. I'm really honored to be here today because part of Hawaiian Museums Association's goals is to, perform more outreach so that we really can speak face to face with our neighbor island institutions. So it really truly is an honor to be here physically today and to see you all and smile at you and then just share in conversation. So it's a pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, my name is Anne Coyle. I am executive director for Halepuna, and we are a nonprofit. We're restoring right now. We're running a couple of programs. We have a food farm growing on our site, Gulick Roll Mission House in Waimea. The house is in a bit of a state right now, but we are going to be restoring it. We had Glenn Mason, who is a really amazing restoration architect. He has worked on Iolani Palace and Kawaiʻa Church. So he has done a historic structures report on the house, and now we just have to get started raising those funds, and we would like to turn it into a museum or some kind of tour experience. It won't be a full museum, but as I was telling Lisa, and Tia Lisa Cowell, he does have quite a few artifacts that she needs storage, not just storage, but a place to display these artifacts. So we're hoping we can show them at the house. That's it.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Ida Cruz. I actually work as a contract worker with the Veterans Center right here in Migori. I'm a volunteer for the museum. It's a very hidden treasure because not everyone on the island knows that we have a military museum. So as a I actually am an honorary because I'm not a veteran, but my late husband was. So right now we're going through a renovation process, and it's been taking us, set back in 3 years because of COVID, and we had to dismantle all of our wooden display cabinets because of termite. So hopefully we plan to reopen back in November for Veterans Day.
Very good. See you around the place. My name is David Hall. I'm president of the Kauai Museum, Veterans Museum, and like he said, we're under a renovation, so hopefully we'll get everything back together by November. And everybody can visit. It's quite an undertaking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good. Angus?
I'm invisible, wearing black. You can't see me.
You're invisible. Okay. I'll say a little bit about Angus then. Angus is Wildwood Studios, and he has helped us, that is the Kauai Museums Hawaii Museums Association a number of times to not only film discussions that we had in the past on cultural competency, but to put together, I think, half a dozen of the discussions on cultural competency that we had throughout the islands last year. So thank you, Angus. Delighted you're here.
And I'd like to chime in on that, Frank. So if you go to our website, hawaiimuseums.org, you can actually access those videos from the Cultural Competency Series. It's available as a resource for everyone. So please check out our website.
Thank you, Lisa. I believe now we're ready for a short walk around the house, and then we'll come back and actually begin the discussion. This is designed to be a very informal session. We want mostly to talk about what our experience has been during the pandemic and how we've opened back up. Because of Fred's commitment and time, I'd like to ask you to do an overview of what's happening with tourism on Kauai.
Just generally.
And also perhaps your experiences at Kilahana opening back up.
Well, overall, I'm on the board for Hawaii Tourism, so I have a pretty good feeling what's happening around the state. And there's such a pent-up demand for tourism. And so it's going to come. This summer's going to be incredibly busy. Spring break was, really busy throughout Hawaii. January, February, March, going into April, May, probably been the first four months best we've ever had at Kilahana. So it's gone from one extreme to the other. I think it's going to stay that way until the economy reaches, whether it's a stock market or it's supply chains. We're going to have some headwinds, but I think through summer it's going to be, for some, not the best time because it's going to be extremely crowded. So what we've been trying to do for a number of years prior to the pandemic with Hawaii Tourism is, how do we get sustainable tourism and, Malama type of tourism, the Pono traveler and so on and so forth. So it couldn't come soon enough, even for me that's been in the industry for almost 50 years now. There needs to be a balance. It's really tough when airlines are unrestricted in how many people they can bring. So with all those things said, I think you're going to see some things happening this summer that's going to hopefully mitigate some of that. So it's going to be a very good time for tourism. Like I say, it could go through the fall. It could all the way to the end of the year. We're not really sure because when you see what the reaction the stock market is having to interest rates and things like that, there'll be an impact. Whether it's a major impact like we've seen before with recessions, hard to say. But Hawaii seems to do better in a recessionary. We're going to go down, and maybe the numbers will be a little more realistic. But the last time we got hit really hard, there was a lot of problems in Mexico, and people didn't want to go to Mexico during that time with the drug wars. So I can talk from Kilahana on that point. Yeah, we were down, but nowhere close to where we thought we were going to be. So time will tell on that as far as what the economy is going to be and dealing with the visitor industry. But right now, during spring break, you couldn't even get a room on the island. And if you could, the regular hotels that were charging under 200 were charging 300 or 400. So it was kind of a boom, and it's always in May it goes down a little bit. It kind of calms down before summer, but it hasn't gone down that much. And I can kind of judge it by our luau's that we'd be right at 750 a night if we had enough help. Right now we're about 650 because we just don't have enough help to staff, and that's very unusual for this time of year. So it's again another gauge of what summer's going to look like. So, does that help at all?
Very much. Questions, please, Ann.
Is this a discussion or do you have a presentation or like?
Well, more a conversation with each of us, and I'd like to include all of you here today also, but primarily our guests, and we'd like questions at any time
Okay.
after each of us has presented. Excuse me.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm really glad, Fred, you brought this up because I just spent a week on Maui, and unquestionably there is demand. There are so many visitors coming. But what I'm seeing now, and I have a lot of friends, so I'm going to give you an example. My friend, he's a chef. He does the breakfast pastries. The head chef just asked, he was already working overtime, and the head chef just added on more things to add. There's so many visitors coming, and the staff are getting overworked, so he quit. So now I'm hearing that people aren't returning to work because there are subsidies, there's rental subsidies and some things like that. But I think I'm also hearing the staff are just getting overworked and overwhelmed, and they don't want to work. And visitors are paying $8.99 a night for hotels on Maui. And so what's happening is they're coming, I have a friend who works the front desk, and she says people are yelling at me because they're paying $8.99 a night. They expect better service, but it's the same level service. I have never seen the airport. I had to wait an hour and a half to get through the line. So I think people are going to still keep coming because they love Hawaii, they want to travel, they're tired of the pandemic. But I don't know, are we able to support that with our infrastructure and our people?
Our numbers so far have not increased beyond what they were in 2019.
Okay.
Okay, the airport right now has a huge problem with TSA.
Yeah.
They do not have enough people. So those long lines are not as many because of the visitor. It's
Right.
locals and visitor. They
It's not
just,
enough staff.
instead of having everything open, wide open, they'll only have one. And they're becoming not the most friendliest people either.
Right.
We just had a meeting about this because they're being asked to do the same thing everyone else is. So when that's one of the reasons. That's one major problem at the airport. There's going to be long lines in summer, and they could be long, but they're much longer now because TSA, and that's a fairly good paying job, and they can't get enough. You mentioned people want to stay home because they're getting subsidies. That happened during the PPP,
Right.
during the closure.
Yeah.
But now I would say it's more the later. It's a staffing issue especially in the visitor industry. We deal on a daily basis, and a lot of it is because someone gets COVID, then you got to, check the other people, and you might have 3 people down out of 1. When they brought it down from 10 days to 5 days, basically kept us open, and I think they need to do that as far as the hospitals, right? The hospitals could not care for the people with a 10-day out.
Yeah.
So, and who would have thought we'd still be talking about it today? I have probably 3 or 4 people out today with COVID, and they're not going to the hospital, thank God, and most people aren't. I had lunch with the mayor last Saturday, and he's really looking at the hospitals to see the levels that we need, to be safe, and he'll pull the trigger if the hospitals are experiencing, because we only have so many ICU beds. I believe it's 14.
Also, I'm wondering if you guys, museums, are experiencing those kinds of troubles too. I would expect not, but I don't know. The staffing.
Well, I don't want to sidetrack, but it sounds like this is a big concern with you is over-tourism, which it is for a lot of people. And local people really complain about traffic. That seems to be their number one issue.
Management that could be better. These are new managerial challenges, and I don't know that management is, they're not addressing it. They're just making people work more, and then that's causing people to leave or get sick or things like that.
Have you heard of the DMAP program?
Which program?
Destination Management Action Plan. Probably the most powerful program that's come out of HTA in combination with the counties. So HTA has funded, like Kauai, $600,000 this year to address, hotspots. I think Kauai did a great job with KA, the way they control the numbers that go out, the permits, the shuttling. And so it's got the community involved instead of just HTA saying, you need to do this. We're saying, here's some money, tell us how we can help you implement it. So those are things that really brought in a lot of community people that are a stakeholder within the tourism industry, very beneficial. And you're going to see much more of that. Right now, we gave Sukanoho with the Visitors Bureau a full-time paid person to work on DMAP. And it's open really for anyone to put comments in. And those things take a little while, but I'll give you a quick example, and then maybe we can move to other people here. If you go to the airport right now, I was kind of shocked. 2 weeks ago, I came back, maybe 3 now, from a board meeting in Honolulu, and I walk out, and the first thing I see in the baggage claim is this huge sign that says, Target is open. And I'm like, okay. Then I walked out, and there's 4 pillars on both sides. All the way down the pillar on the outside where you're waiting says, Target is open. Target is open. I said, is that really the message we want? So fortunately for us, we just got, and hopefully we'll prove it next week at our board meeting, a lot of money to replace those type of signs with some banners that, drive with aloha. Just certain messaging, if you're going to, trail messaging, ocean safety messaging. And I'm hoping by the end of June, you're going to see a different messaging. Plus, the Rotary Club has funded KLA, the Kauai Lifeguard Association, about having on the video screens talking about ocean safety. Okay, we've given money to continue with that. So that's all part of the Malama, it's part of the DMAP. And, we need to resolve the problems instead of just complain about them. And I'm pretty happy to be part of getting all that stuff done.
Hey Fred, is the demographic of our visitor changing because it's $8.99 now? Is it a different type of visitor? I mean, for this group especially, who's coming out here, and are these better suited people for us than museums?
That's a good question. It's an excellent question. And I would think when you see those kind of hotel room rates, it's definitely going to go to a higher spend. But we have to also look at what is our industry on Kauai. If you look at the east side of the island, it's your 3-star hotel. It's for the person that can spend a couple $100. So, and they're jacking their rates up too. But that's kind of supply and demand. Right now, people are spending, even at the luau, our rates are really high, not close to what the Hyatt's charging for a luau or Sheraton's charging for a luau. They're charging a couple $100 a person, right? $100 for a kid. We're not doing that, but I can't believe how any of these couples can bring their 3 kids and spend $600 to watch a show and have some, luau food. But they do, and I think it's a pent-up demand. The room rates will go up and down just like airfares. Hawaiians are already starting some airfares, for the fall. But who do we want? I don't care if they come, with $500 in the pocket or $5,000 or $500,000. Are they going to respect us as a culture, and are they going to be respectful as a traveler? That to me is more important. We're getting a lot of ones that want to backpack and stuff like that. That's difficult for them because there's not they can't get down to Pali. You're only going to take about 600-700 people a day. It used to be thousands. So what I'm seeing is we've created a solution for KA, but now you go to Makua, or people call it tunnels, it's really backed up to Kokay. So the people can't go there. They're going to find some trail. And maybe if we spread it out enough, you won't feel it as much. But Kokay's feeling it. When I drive up there, there's cars everywhere. Even at the two lookout points, you'll see cars on the road. Either they don't want to pay the fee now, or more likely it's just full. Because people are going to go somewhere on their vacation, and the biggest lead of that is social media has blown up every trail on our island, which to me is very unfortunate. And there's not too much that you can go to and know that you're going to see local people and not, So anyway.
Let me address two things. First of all, KA. KA is a marvelous model, I think, for Hawaii tourism. I know that it's working very well for the community. And for the last year, I believe there has been a contract between state parks and the Hui Maka'ainaina o Makana. In any event, that's changing over a little bit, away from the Republic Parking Corporation, which manages many of the rest of the parking lots in state parks throughout Hawaii. And that's going back to the community. That's a very important source, because that's about $1.5 million a year, I believe, at Kokay. I understand, at KA, excuse me. I understand that there's about $1 million a year coming to state parks for the parking lots at Kokay. But like Fred, when I drive up to Kokay, I see many, many cars on the side of the road, and that creates a safety problem. And I'm happy that State Parks is working with the Department of Transportation to sign those areas where it is dangerous to park and provide, like at KA and on the North Shore, a $200 fine. That's an important step forward. That'll be a few months, we expect, but I'm very happy. And Parks also plans to increase the number of parking spaces at Kokay for those literally hundreds, or perhaps 1,000 or more tourists that drive up every day.
Yeah, and HTA was involved. The KA master plan is still going on, but they were able to implement it to really take the tension out of KA, that whole area. And what worked there is the first time I saw it, and we actually supported them on a number of grants and funds, and they were able, this Hui, which is Chipper and a bunch of great people out there, wonderful people, we went out to find out how we could help from HTA. And when I realized that this is years ago, this is before the big storm, that they were actually working with the state, and they were actually able to go in there and reclaim all those lowies. That's how it used to be. That whole area from the current parking lot all the way that area was all taro. And they were doing it by hand. I mean, taking out the Java plum trees and big trees, all by hand. They didn't have any help. No one was helping them. They just went out and did it, because and it had been going on for many, many years. And we got to the point where we could give them a grant to actually, bring in some machinery. They actually redid the parking lot, and it was, in that parking lot you could lose a rental car. It was so deep and rutted. But they got all that done, and they did it with the help of their contractor friends, and they did it probably for 300% less than it would have been a state job. But the main thing, they got to work together, and to that point, the rain hit, and they got all the federal money, and they were able to do the boardwalk and all this, and then the shuttle came, and we were out there about a year and a half ago, and they said, what do you think we should do? You think we should charge $20 for the shuttle? I said, why don't you charge what you think is fair based on how quality of a drive out is going to be? And if it's that good, you can charge $30, $35. But if it's not even worth $20, you're going to know about it. And I think they're charging somewhere around $30 now, and they're making money. The second thing they did is what you said, is that they're splitting that with the state for 1 year. It's only a 1 year deal. So They're doing incredible stuff as a community, our community. If the state tries to take it away and have it all go into general funds, that's when our community says, no, you can't do that. We want the money spent at KA, and if they don't need it all there, then it can help Mokua, or it can help all these smaller parks that have no funding, never have funding, right? So I hope that happens. And, Chipper gave a presentation to HTA, and it just blew everybody away. Because he showed in this presentation when they really started. It was 20 years ago when they started, right? And his big thing is, don't wait for a grant. Just do it because this is what you think you need to do for your community or for the culture or whatever. Very powerful presentation. People are blown away. And unfortunately for us, because of COVID, it was Zoomed. So anyone that wants to go to any of our, whether it's our marketing, branding, they can all just sit there and tune in. So this at the board meeting, we're trying to get the money, not just for Kauai, but each county is going to get a lot of money. And fortunately, it looks like it's going to be approved that we can change our signage at the airport to have some meaningful, they walk by and they almost have the story about, be a respectful visit. We can't make them, but we can sure try to tell them what our culture's about and so anyway, enough of that.
Could I add a brief thought?
Sure.
Relative to what you mentioned, and I think the culture of travelers, the culture of human beings has shifted through COVID, and we experienced that on the front lines of managing visitation, and our employees experienced that. And I think that I just wanted to touch base on the messaging is one of the things we at least do have control over, trying to reinforce positive statements, positive messages that help communicate. You can't necessarily change someone's behavior, but if you at least took the time to put that information out there, then it's up to that person to hopefully adopt that. But one of the issues I think for us, it's always an issue as a manager, is managing our teams and keeping their strength and support up through this. And certainly as tourism has rebounded in a fierce way, beautiful and fierce at the same time, many of us are doing so with fewer staff than we had before. And so unfortunately, as you said, asking even more of some of those team members, and at a time as well where the culture of the traveler is actually in many respects making it more difficult for them, because it's a sad shift to see how people are treated on the front line. And so I just want to mention, I don't have a solution other than to be there as a manager for my employees, to do everything we can to ease that energy. And for many of us as well, it's reducing volume of what we could possibly do because we just can't meet the need. And you do need to take care of a good employee if you have one. And for us as well, I think COVID and some of that support that came through the PPE shifted people's expectations of what it takes to survive and to say, am I willing to work at the same pay rate that I was before? I think for us, we've had to elevate the amount that we pay our employees as a response to actually having more of a livable wage through the PPE experience. And so anyway, I just wanted to mention that I'm certainly seeing some of that as a frontline manager, and it's something for us all to continue to adapt to.
Thomas, perhaps you'd continue with what you're doing at Kilauea Point.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm the manager of the Friends group that works out at Kilauea Point National Wildlife Refuge. Historically has been one of the most visited sites on the island of Kauai, and that's a beautiful thing. The Friends group that I lead manages the visitor center and the nature store out there, and so we have been the recipient of lots of folks coming through here. So the story that I have to share is that we knew leading into COVID that it was unsustainable. The amount of traffic and visitation out of that very narrow piece of land out of Kilauea Point was just untenable. And our park rangers, whom we partner with, all day long, all they were doing is mitigating traffic and turning people away, as opposed to doing visitor and turf and all of the things that they're actually hired and trained to do. And so there was already a vision, and COVID allowed that to actually happen, to introduce a reservation system out at Kilauea Point, following in the great model of KA and some of the other systems out in Haiana that developed that. It was a good time to make that shift. And so for us, we're seeing all kinds of traffic out on the highway, but for us, our experience today is we have 1/3 of the volume that we had before COVID. There's some pluses and minuses around that I'd be happy to explore a little bit of. But so for us, like I said before, loads of volume was creating an opportunity, earned income, and lots of people coming to your site. What we're experiencing now with the reservation in place is a shift, and there are plenty of people that may be disgruntled because they aren't able to come out and enjoy our site. But the ones that do, the ones that have been there before, and we get lots of repeat visitors, are sharing that with fewer people out there, what a richer experience it is. They're able to much more widely enjoy just the space itself, the beauty of the majesty of it. Much more time spent with the volunteer docents hearing the stories and getting the actual history of the place, or picking up a story that someone else is telling, or actually learning about the wildlife that we're there to represent. And then when the folks do make it into our visitor center and into our nature store, the limited team that I have is able to interact with many more of the folks when they come through. Their experience, I think, is much richer than it had been before. And that's echoing into more people actually understanding why we're there, what we do, what the history of this place is, because we're able to communicate that. There are a lot of passive visitors to our space, but I think we can elevate that a lot more with the docent style sharing that our team is trained to do. So as we came through this shift, we as well reinforced that the team that I manage in the nature store and the visitor center is truly a visitor center associate, and like many docents that all of you have in museums, I ensured that my team was trained to be able to explain this place, share the history, and respond to the needs of visitors. Whereas before, all day long, all they could really do is get people in and out of a nature store. Those are two very different types of employees. Someone who could clerk really quickly just to get people, get their transaction and get them out, as opposed to those that take the time and really enjoy engaging with people. And so it's been a great shift to say, this is now an elevation of what we're here to do. Let's hire team members who are able to enjoy that and to do that well, and to train them so that they have the information so they can do that. So interesting shifts with that. One result of that is a significant loss of earned income. So we as an organization, not only did we have 18 months of closure through COVID, like many of us did, but now, like I said, we have 1/3 of the visitation that we had before. That's a largely permanent shift at this point in terms of the amount of income that we get in terms of fee dollars coming into the organization. And so two pluses on that. Like I said, when people have a little bit more time to spend in our store, in our shop, and we can make suggestive selling, or we're talking about excitement about something and then just share a book with them or something like that, the amount that each person is spending in the store has increased. That's been a delightful experience to witness. There was no guarantees that was going to happen. And it's not enough to completely overcome the fact that 2/3 of the original volume isn't there, but it has elevated for sure the viability of the space based upon the number of folks coming through. As well, with people understanding who we are a little bit better, more of them are signing up for our emails, joining us as a member, and becoming a part of our Ohana and following us and supporting us. And so thankfully, fundraising and communications has been a focus of mine during this time period when we've shifted energy. And I'm delighted to say that we're now raising more money through fundraising than we did before COVID. So that doesn't always happen as a fundraiser. I'm delighted that at least for now that's happening. We've got some really great relationships. And we as an organization, from a financial perspective, are healthier than we were before because we were just so reliant solely on earned income prior to COVID. It was a very unique model for our organization. So some positives definitely coming out of it, but a unique permanent shift in terms of, for us, there's lots of people on the island, but not as many through our gates and through our door. And for us to figure out how to do that and maximize that. And then in the future, there's some conversations about future shuttles and things like that might bring back some numbers to our gate, which are future partnerships, future ways of being a visitor on this island to experience traveling like that. But for today, that's what our experience has been, some pluses and some minuses for sure. But at the moment we survived as an organization. I'm delighted about that. We're still here doing what we're here to do. And like I said, I'm just pleased to say that the visitors that do come through are really appreciating more time, more energy in the space, and that's having a positive outcome for us.
Marvelous. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question. question for you, Thomas.
Sure.
The Kilauea Lighthouse used to be something that only the old people who were interested in birds wanted to do. Now it's so popular. Can you attribute that to anything? Or do you know what happened?
You know, I don't know. Perhaps one piece of it as well is just the shift of social media and people's awareness around places. You know, it became, you know, the lighthouse became a bucket list. You know, if you come to Kauai, check that off. And so that was another shift for us as well to say, lots of people just said, I'm on vacation. What all do I need to do? I need to see the lighthouse. And I'm glad that's the case. That's been fantastic. A couple of challenges from that. One is sort of the mixed message in terms of where people get information about our facility, because it's in so many guidebooks, on so many websites, and in so many places that whenever we make a shift, for example, hours of operation and things like that, trying to manage that is really challenging because people are accessing us through many different places. So the good and the bad of having such a wide message. And then for us, like I said, the other piece of it is a lot of people coming just to quickly check a box. Yeah, I raced out there to saw the lighthouse. It's up to us now to slow them down and tell more of our story, share some of the history of the place, let them know that actually they're at a national wildlife refuge, and many of them don't even know that until they get out there. And so for us to work that other massive aspect of our mission, which is to educate people about the importance of endangered species and whether they're here on our island or wherever they go back home, to make shifts in how they live that help protect our environment, we can tell that story a little bit better, or capture people that never knew they were even coming for that message because they came out racing just for the lighthouse. So I'm not 100% sure what to attribute to other than just awareness and people's new way of traveling where there's these must-see things to do.
TripAdvisor.
Big piece of it, yeah. But it is interesting. It's nice to see that even though people just want to come out and look at something, I think they are hungry for stories and to have a richer experience of it. And so, like I said, to have more people gathering around and enjoying the docents telling the stories. We've also then, I say we, in partnership with the Visitor Center, my refuge team, which actually does this, we've added digital media in our nature store and visitor center as well that has lots of videos and history within it, because that's another way that people like to access it, information more passively on their own. They can flip through the videos that they would like. And so that's been a nice advent of a new way to share information and to get people excited about historic places and spaces.
More questions for Thomas? Okay. Chucky?
Sure.
Are you on?
Thank you, Mahalo, for allowing me to share a bit of Kauai Museum. And like Tom, I think the difference between a federal entity and a little Kauai Museum, we were talking about they have a built-in audience, worldwide, and it's a challenge for us to, I don't want to use the word compete, well, to be on the same stage. And, but the difference with Kilauea is when I heard him say they dropped to about a third. Well, we're quite the opposite. We're like pre-COVID, we were like, the numbers just kept increasing as far as revenue and admissions, as far as the people count, and we've never seen this kind of numbers. It's kind of crazy, and to be short-staffed, that's like just like you. It's a huge challenge, and what's important is we have the yin and the yang, so the millennial and the kupuna on the team. It's so beautiful because the millennial, while the kupuna will share stories. So you have someone that shares their aloha in our shop. That's the greeting area. The admissions is right in our shop, and so to have that combination, it's really dynamic. I wish I could have 2 more teams like that. But for some reason, like every one of us, we're struggling to get more employees. And finally, about a year later, we finally can open on Saturdays. And we're excited about that, and that'll take place in June. And also what Fred said in regards to, don't wait for a grant, what Chipper Whitman presented. No, if you have an idea and it's for the greater good of your institution, it is great for the community. You just go ahead and prepare it and get it ready, and then hopefully you get the grant. But if you don't, then you have people out there that want to support a great idea or a new exhibit of some sort. So that's where we're at, and we really had a great place, even though we continue to struggle with, are we going to be mandated to mask up, and like I should be wearing my mask now, but it's just hard to speak. But you should come and see us masked up, and we all do the protocols at the museum. We always welcome with the traditions of Oli, chanting, and the visitors love that, the experience of, bits and pieces of our tradition that comes to life. So that was put in place prior to COVID, and now we have a chance to continue that way to share the aloha. And when I talk about the millennial and the kupuna team, they're our frontliners, and our little millennials learns a lot from the kupuna greetings. It's just natural, right? And it works for the museum, and it's quality visit. It's quality time that is spent at the museum because of this. And sometimes we like when it's really hot and everybody's out there in the beach, and so we get to breathe. Just little rain. Our museum is kind of crazy. We love the rain, but we need the rain. But at the same time, it's really quality time, and that is being spent at the museum. That it's something we want, and we struggle with the demand of things from our little shop also, and it's a great problem that we have. We just can't keep up with product. And we'll get there. We'll figure it out someday. We just have to go out there to Tahiti and Cook Islands, wherever we get some of our product, and get it ourselves. And things like that's been happening at the museum. But we're grateful for people like HTA and KVB. It's really, we're all on the same canoe at this time as far as messaging to the community, to the visitors, about Molomakoi, to care for the island. We're all in the same canoe, and I'm grateful for that, because we're consistent in the messaging about, respect for the island, or respect for people. It's just that aloha aino, the aloha in the DNA that we have that needs to be shared, but not everybody has that. Right? You got to find it in yourself, and then you go, you welcome people with that. But we're all in the same boat with the HTA and so forth, and we're grateful to their works, and kudos to John DeFries for, leading this new vision and bringing it to the forefront. About Ma'alama Hawaii, and we're all in it, so. That's where we are right now.
Thanks. Questions for Chucky Boy?
I've got about 10 minutes, so if you want me to talk about the Kilohana thing, I can do that.
Good. Sure. Please.
But what he said is so true, is the grants will follow. And again, KA set a precedent, and now they have Wainapa Napa on Maui doing the same thing. There's a couple that are going to go into effect.
Bravo.
And I have to say, over the 8 years I've been on the board, I got one more month and I'm done, thank God. But that's a lot. Politically, you get beat up for visitor bureau. Oh my God, visitor. But anyway, there's a major shift that you guys are going to see, and I think you're going to be really happy with it. But it takes as much, like he said, we got to be in the same canoe. 2020, we did a plan for 5 years. And this time, totally different. It wasn't about only marketing. It's a community, it's culture, and it's our natural resources. So anytime anything, it has to include as many of the 4 pillars, or we won't do the program. And they're changing. People are saying, okay, and they're finding out that the visitor does love it. There are some rowdy visitors. It doesn't matter what you do, they're going to come, but they're not going to, not the majority. But Kilohana, fortunately for us, we were closed for a year with the Niki, so we understood what it was like to be totally shut down, have just enough labor to take care of the grounds. Unfortunately, we're not like a restaurant. We can close the doors, decide what you're going to do with the food in the freezer, open up when you can open up and get new inventory. We have 104 acres, kind of like this. If it shuts down, you still got the maintenance. For us, we still have the electrical costs. We have our key employees, the grounds, the mowing. But we got our rent, we got our insurance, because we got to insure all those. So, we were hemorrhaging about $80,000 a month just to be closed, right? So, for us, we realized after Aniki, I didn't want to have another night like that and not sure what I was going to have as a business the next day. So we put away money for almost 30 years. And we could have done it without PPP, but it probably would have brought us back to where we were, 30 years ago. So for us, we had to close down. It was tough, but with a Niki, you knew how bad the damage at 24 hours, and then it was over, and when are they going to come back? But this was always only going to last 2 months, or maybe 3 months. Yeah. And then they're bringing in a mercy ship into, New York because they thought they, needed it. So it went on and on and on, and I have to say, the PPP program made all the difference in the world because we were able to bring back people. We were operating 7 days a week. We couldn't do we had to totally restore our trains. It gave us time to do that. We had to prune all the orchards, 880 trees. And so we were able to bring back our people that may be a waiter, but they wanted, to come back. And we were fortunate. We had very, very little people that just stayed out for the money. And in a lot of cases, it was more than they were making. But on the other hand, it helped them in the long term, for Social Security. And they just wanted to be with people. They were been closed down as, whether in their homes or what they could do. And they were just happy to be back as an entity. So it gave us an incredible amount of time to do what we really needed to do. So the property came out much better than it did going in. Financially, we had a plan of how we were going to reopen. We totally redid our restaurant in regards to what we wanted to do to convey. When we had to take it over a number of years ago, it was called 22 North. And they changed the name from Gaylord's, which is Gaylord Wilcox. And it was just a struggle because for a number of different reasons. But we call it the Plantation House at Gaylord's now to let people know a little more what Gaylord's mean. A lot of people thought it was an Indian restaurant in San Francisco or back east. So it was just a reawakening. But the key thing I would take is it's your people. It's the people coming back and letting them understand how, what's going on with the visitor, and they had to get these tests that cost an incredible amount of money. Okay, then airfares, and then the rooms, everything was just twice as much. They had to rent a Turo car for $200-300 a day. And I said, when they come into Kilohana, this is for local people and visitors. We opened in '86, and our deal was if we open it up, it's always been private. It's like opening something like this. This is how private Kilohana was. No one went in there. It was a very private estate. So if we get the locals to come, the visitors will follow. So we've always been really keen on doing fundraisers or weddings or whatever. But on the visitor, I come from the industry from the old Kauai surf days, which is now the Sonesta. And I've always felt that 90% of the visitors are really good people. And especially we had so many returnees at Kauai surf. Same room, everything. So I had to impress upon my employees that when they came into Kilohana, kind of aloha spoken here. If you're kind to these people, your tips are going to be better. They're going to see that people, do still have that aloha spirit. It was missing, when we were closing down, we had all those people at the airport, go home, we don't want your money. It was negative. But coming out of it, those people really kind of held back. Because I honestly think they're starting to realize that we're trying to address their concerns. And a good example is some of the people that yelled the loudest, hands across the road in KA with all this stuff, through all these grants that they're getting now, because when you're a success, people that write grants want to give it to a successful thing, say, oh yeah, we're part of KA now. They got more money, but you know what they're doing? They're bringing in some of these guys that, and brought it into what they're doing. And it was interesting, one of them told me, the ones that yelled the loudest is because no one was listening. And they have some really great ideas, and now we're letting them put those ideas to work within their own community, and the dividends are huge. So on a different level, we tried to open up with just a lot of service with Aloha, you know. And it's a different, because you're out there, you're getting 95% visitors. We have a very healthy amount of local people that have gone to Kelowna for many years, and we're getting local people who've never even been there. I mean, it's interesting, but the most thing I'm proud about is our restaurant is getting such great local support right now. Even when we're slow, we're getting more locals on a weekend, Friday and Saturday, than we're getting visitors sometimes. And they're happy, and our chef's happy, and he's done a lot of work. So we had a plan of what we needed to do. PPP accelerated everything. To have that, money to pay and keep people afloat, keep us afloat was huge. And we got the second one as well. So we would have lost $2.5 million, and we didn't have to lose 2.5. So, but the thing is, be prepared and have a plan before anything happens. Our plan was a hurricane. No clue about a pandemic. So we bought $2.5 million of interruption insurance for the buildings, and $2.5 million what they call interruption insurance. So that means, while you're down, you can pay all your key people, right? They have to be key people. We had plenty. And then when you're done with that, they take 3 years prior to the hurricane, and they divide that into what your profit was. And out of those 3 years, they write you a check for that. So that's when I said, you know what, I'm going to sleep really good and hope concentrate on people being safe. Us is pretty, they got to go home. We had a few people that stayed, for Aniki. So that's kind of what we, I think our people see, by having that real courteous, demeanor and asking questions. And, we took a lot of tables out because of COVID, the social distance. We never put them back in. Because people really enjoy that separation. But we also, fortunately for us, we've added a lanai on. And because of that, we have about the same numbers. We could have went, like you're saying, we could have went for the max. We went for about what we had spread out everywhere. And, even now, I mean, we're, some of us have to wear masks at work and things like that. People are still concerned about COVID, so they really like not having it. We used to have a 4-top and a deuce right there. Right now, the waiter can stand and walk around the table, so quantity is not always the best for quality. Any questions? Then I better run. I have a group, he's flying in from Maui. He wants to do a pharmaceutical group at Kelowna, an off-property night for 650 people. And when we opened Kelowna, our main thrust was to use the grounds around there to do parties for what was then the Westin and the Hyatt. And now basically Hyatt's the only one that really brings us groups that want to buy out the property for the evening. And it's the difference in making a good month to a great month. So I don't want to keep them waiting, but I don't know what time it is.
Good luck with your meeting.
I got a couple. I got 5 minutes for questions.
I guess I just have a really basic question, and it's in regards to digital programming. So I'm kind of curious, Chucky Boy and Thomas, also Fred, and Sam, when we talk about like the shift that the pandemic has placed us all in, just our mindsets, just for our sites, for our programming in general, for our relationships to our staff, etc. I'm just kind of curious if that led your organization or institution to delve more into digital programming. And then if you could just maybe talk a little bit about that, and whether or not that's opened up a new category of visitorship, to your organization.
Fred.
What was the name that you put on that program? I didn't hear that, what you asked. The question was
Oh, yes, and digital programs.
Institutional?
digital programs?
Oh, digital. Oh, gosh, digital. That's a really good question. So before COVID, we used to spend $10,000 to $12,000 a month on print advertising. Okay, and you know, it was, you name it, venture and romance magazines, This Week, Spotlight, and you feel like you had to be in every right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of those went down. And when we first opened, hardly any of them were back. You know, even in-flight Hawaiian Airlines, we didn't do that. That was too expensive. But all these ones that were down, and one of the things we really realized prior to the pandemic was digital, you know, media is taking over. This for messaging and awareness. So when we opened, I still do it today. Usually, if I'm there for more than 4 or 5 hours, I'll talk to 2 or 3 people, whether having lunch, sitting in the bar, whatever, just to figure out how they heard about us. A lot of them been there before, you know. They saw it driving by and finally came in, or had been there 20 times, seriously. And you see it in the magazines, you know. And so we don't have any magazine. We have one that goes into the high-end upscale. It's a very beautiful, it's called Savvy 360. But they're all clamoring to come back in now. And I said, you know, our problem is we don't have enough help. It's not getting people in the restaurant. So that's changed. And a lot of them aren't coming back. You know, they just can't compete with social media and you know, that type of marketing. It's very, very effective. And also when you have TripAdvisor and things like that, you know, it's your ratings. And I hate to say it, because you can have people that weren't happy with each other way before they sat down at table number 20. And they just want to give somebody a hard time to make them feel a little better. And something, you know, occasionally it's our fault and we apologize, we'll come off the meal, whatever we got to do. But, you know, those are the kind of things you really got to look at. But as you know, so what we did, we haven't raised our food price as much as we should because we feel we've saved $12,000. And we're high, but we're not as high as anyone, you know, like Roy's and Kyoki, all those people, they're charging $18 for a Mai Tai. We're charging $12, right? And my people are going, you got to raise it. I said, no, we're doing good. We're making money. And the locals can, you know, $12 for Mai Tai is too expensive for me. You know, but when you're doing $18 for a Mai Tai, something's wrong. I know how much a Mai Tai costs. And we do all fresh fruit. And we even grind our own sugar cane instead of using regular sugar. It's all natural and people like it and they take videos. So digital is huge. Digital, as far as conveying our message, you know, from a visitor industry, huge. And also, you know, most of the people I ask how they hear about it, they usually pick up their phone, right? Hungry in Lahui. Gaylord get enough traction in there, and you know we spent about $3,000 in having someone control our, you know, our social media. So.
$3,000 a month?
Yeah, and that's not much for social media. But right now I don't want to, you know, we are turning people away for dinner almost every night. And
I want to say thank you for your Hawaiian special because it's a meaningful discount and it really helps local people. It's not surprising to me that local people.
Well, we do a lot of things, you know. It's just not the restaurant. The train, I think on Sundays we do 25% off on the luau, but the train is, you know, just $20 for adults. And it's probably the cheapest activity on the island, but I think it's 10 or 12 on Sundays for locals, and it's $5 or $6 for kids. So we get a lot of, and that's great, you know. I mean, we have to pull that train around whether there's 60 people on it or 140, I think is our max. So we're in a good position, and I enjoyed being with you guys today. Very nice.
Thanks
I wish I could spend longer because I wanted more input and questions because I like to learn every time so I told HTA, I said, when I come here, I want to learn something, right? I don't want to just be told that we're going to pass this stuff. Yeah, so anyway.
Good luck with your meeting.
Yeah, and I don't know if any of you know Stephanie Iona. You might know her. Stephanie is going to take my place. I think she's a great replacement. Yeah, because she's really into ag right now, but she's been in the hotel industry for many years. She used to run Waimea Plantation Cottages, very connected with, Ron Kochi, who's our Senate president. And I think she definitely gets the DMAP programs because she does a lot of community fundraising stuff herself. So I think your guys are in really good hands with her. All right.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Fred. I'd also like to thank Fred on behalf of the Hawaii Museums Association, because last year, Hawaii Tourism Authority funded us to produce a series of half a dozen cultural competency seminars on each of the islands overall. But I've been in Hawaii almost 60 years. Next year will be my 60 years. But much appreciate the help of the Hawaii Tourism Authority.
Well, one of the things, they asked me to stay on one more year, I said no. I resigned 2 years ago, and then the whole ledge shut down because of COVID. And they said you have to stay, otherwise the governor can pick their Kauai rep, and Ron won't be able to pick her. And so here I am, I got one more month. But I told them the reason I didn't want to stay on that last year, I actually can do more for the people of Kauai, me being off the board, because there's no conflict of interest, right? And I'm ready to do that. I mean, I think it's time to, Kauai, all the time on the board meetings, what does Kauai think? Because they always think we're we're a separate kingdom, but we were also the first one that got the DMAP done, the first one that did KA. We had a Kauai museum that's part of this whole his video on the llama doesn't get any better. And it's going to be, I don't know when she's going to do the total reveal, but it is the best. He mentioned John DeFries. John DeFries is Hawaiian and fought really hard to get the first Hawaiian in there. And now Kalani Ka'ana'a, who's our brand marketing manager, he's Hawaiian. I think since I've been on there, there's probably 8 staff now that are Hawaiian. There was 1. And all our agendas are all done in English and they're all done in Hawaiian. And we start our meetings with a Hawaiian hule. And one of the board members asked our Kalani Ka'ana'a, goes, so how's the halal doing? Because he's hired so many. How's the halal doing?
Thank you, Fred. Thank you.
Okay.
Sam, I think it's on you.
right.
I'm going to take a short break.
All right, fair enough, Frank. We were quite busy during the pandemic period at Waioli. We had a number of things happen. Of course, like everyone, we were shut down. I think the first half of Fred's presentation is, I would say, almost exactly the same thing. When you have a National Historic Registry set of properties that are 100 years old or more, it doesn't stop. You can't just take a pit stop. You can't just mothball things. So we're fortunate in that we're kind of a living museum of sorts. We do have the Kaipu Camp. We have people that live on the grounds at Waioli Mission House and Mahamoku. So those people, never missed a step. They continue to do the fine work that they do, caring for the assets that are, we're stewarding here. And in fact, it gave us a chance to do a little bit more, maybe deep cleaning, deep inspection on things, to spend some energy on things that you can't do when you have visitors constantly coming through. So that was, a really wonderful time. In the first year of the pandemic, along the way, we ended up with a vacancy for our executive director. Some of us sort of tried to patch it together and make it happen while we were all balancing the rest of our lives. And unfortunately, we lost Dick Sloggett, who was a wonderful historian with us, a family member. And along the way, our one-time interim director, Paul Horner, called and just called about that and was very, sad to hear, and et cetera. And shortly after that, we had Hurricane Doug come by. And he called after that and said, is everything okay? Because, of course, being in Arizona, he said, well, it looks like you guys are going to get cracks. And I said, it wasn't even a rainy day. It's like nothing happened over here. You might have had it slightly the worst, probably here at the closest point there. Yeah. But he asked that, and then he had heard about our change, and he said, well, what's going on? What are you doing about that? And I said, well, we're not real sure. We're evaluating what we should do. It's a pandemic, it's kind of a challenging time. And he said, I'm just working up here and semi-retired, I could come back. And, Paul's from Hawaii and strong ties here on Kauai, including the gentleman next to me. So we had a discussion about that, and we were able to bring him back. I think one of the best things about bringing him back was the quarantine. We got to put him in one of the camp houses out there. We gave him the Grow Farm book. We said, here, you got 10 days, read, learn. And, the first tour of Paul Horner, if you will, was right off of being at Kukui'ula as general manager, which was right after another general manager, he really coming out of the hotel, really not getting over from the fast lane to the slow lane quite all the way. So the second tour, he's much closer to, if not living in the slow lane anyway. He had a chance to read the book, and he kind of self-admitted, the first time around I really didn't get it, but now I think I get it a little better. That was really wonderful. We had a chance to then talk about, the people that care for everything, and, just like you all have said, the employee set, and, how it's important that we make sure that they're in a good place, because if they're not in a good place, the rest of it won't mean very much. We have all this tremendous assets and this wonderful history, but without the right people helping to preserve those things and share those experiences and care for things, then let's care, right? The board met very frequently by Zoom. My average board age is probably older than most of yours. They're all pretty much retired except for me. So we were able to adapt to Zoom. We met a lot about a lot of variety of issues, including a little project that we were working on, a little secret project. We practiced some extraordinary governance and entered into a event that changes our nonprofit, I like to think, perpetually, if not just many generations. And it was, an interesting opportunity for us. A lot of people have different views about it, and only time will tell how it's really going to play all the way out for all parties that are interested. But we're hopeful that the property there is in fine hands and will be cared for probably better than we could care for it over at Lepeuli. It allowed us then to say, okay, well, what should we do with our museum now and our organization? Before the event, we were probably considered a really successful and fortunate nonprofit because we had reserves and an investment portfolio. And even still, it was very challenging to care for our assets. And the way I think of it is, we had at the time 5, and now we have 4 really important things that we care for. This wonderful campus here, Grow Farm Homestead Museum, the original Waioli Mission House, which is behind the Green Church, which most people don't even know. They go, oh, you mean the ones by the Green Church? I go, no, behind. Oh, yeah, I've seen those from the road. No, you can't see it from the road. And that, that's been a little bit by design. We're cautious about how many people we want to bring and how we want to market things, but and then Mahamoku, which is over by Pine Trees, it's the kind of brown beach house that's there, and our locomotives. So those 4 things. And, we were very fortunate before the way Miss Mabel put together our nonprofit and the governance group that's taken care of things for several decades. But even still, it was very challenging to have a budget that could hire enough of the staff and perform enough of the work to keep things up. So we practiced a lot of great governance, and we had an event and a transaction, and it's been an interesting time since. Some of the earliest first things we did was we began looking at the employee set and what can we do for our employees. Might seem insignificant today because of what the legislature did this year, but early on, back in 21, we said, well, let's go ahead and raise all our salaries and wages to $15 more per hour, which was sort of the magic number being kicked around about, oh, why can't we have $15? And we said, well, we're going to have it because we can. We're going to. Let's go. So we moved everybody up. Everybody on the staff got upgrades to new levels. And we were able to do that because of our situation. We also then started looking at other things that are important for the employees, including our personnel policies, which were still in review, but we were modernizing them, bringing them up, strengthening them. so that our employees would understand the culture here of, treating each other with aloha and respect and just, being professional and all that. So we're continuing to work on that. We've been redrawing the org chart over and over and over, it seems like, and the org chart is now being drawn to bring in some new boxes that, it was always kind of like, wouldn't it be great if, well, now we can. So we're going to try and add some of those things, and our staff is doing a great job, and they're so committed and they're so loyal, and they do a great job. But just like everybody else, we've got vacancies. We've been adding for vacancies, and we aren't hiring anybody. It's really challenging. The most recent one Julie would tell you about was a person getting a master's degree in a museum-related field, finishing up, maybe today is her graduation perhaps, on the mainland. She wanted to come out. She applied for a very entry-level position, seemed very interested, wanted to know about the future with the organization. Is there upward mobility, which there would be for someone like that, and just found out how much housing was and what we could pay and what, and even still, it's like, oh, wow, I'm not going to be able to come out. And we're so sad because that would be a wonderful person to add to our mix, but this is the challenge we all face, right? Even if we have the most interesting and exciting opportunity, the labor force is so odd right now, I think. Who's looking and what are they willing to do for what types of things. So we're struggling with that even still, but we're continuing to work on our org chart and the things we want to be able to accomplish. And we're hopeful when we get through some of that, we're going to begin to add some people and those who are willing to work and who are interested in preservation or history or culture are going to find that this is an amazing place to be. I think our current employee set, during pandemic, we only lost maybe 2 people or maybe 3. One was kind of a retirement, and one person left to pursue other interests, but most of the others stayed on. And then hiring people is a challenge, so we haven't really been able to add yet, but we plan to. So within, having worked on some ideas for employee set, increasing pay, reviewing policies in the org chart, and by the way, also modernizing our retirement plan, which we're currently kind of coming out with. We also started looking at repair and maintenance, and that was something we were very mindful of during our pandemic period when we were working on our big project. Was like, hey, at the end of the day, at the very end of the day, we want to make sure that we have a wonderful endowment that can support our organization, until my grandkids who are not born are finished with their time here. But also, we want to address some things immediately that we've sort of deferred, or we just don't have the money. We'll get to it later. So we're working on a process right now. Poor Julie, she has a big spreadsheet I gave her with about 5 or 6 tabs for each of our properties and a list of things, and just say, here, this is the beginning. Like, add everything to it and try to figure out the cost of it all. And then we can't do it, but let's prioritize what we can do. Let's see when and how much and which ones are first and which ones are next, so we can catch up on some things that we fell behind on and make sure that we're, stewarding the properties and the locomotives the best we can. In the process of that, we also are looking at our, just like Fred said, we dabbled in the event location because we have amazing locations. Like Angus probably could stay here until Christmas and he'd run out, his batteries would be dead every day because he would just be finding these wonderful things that we have in our care here or at the other properties. And
I accept your invitation.
Yeah. So we're sort of re-examining that. We did that, like Fred, talked about. We did that previously because it was a wonderful source of perhaps some nice revenue, and we can do it in a way that's not too invasive on our museum assets. It can be in the lawn, and there's the beautiful house, but we're not going to trample 500 people through it in the evening because they came for a wedding with their drinks. But they could be out here, and that's wonderful. But I think we're even looking at those and going, well, we're fortunate because of our situation. So do we need to have these things? Or what kinds of things do we need to have that are most meaningful? They don't have to make a profit so much for us anymore. They probably should pay for themselves somewhat. But what kinds of things should we do? So along the way, one of the things we stumbled upon, which golly, should have been an obvious one 100 years ago, or whatever, 50 years ago, was during pandemic, the nursing program at KCC wanted to have a graduation. We couldn't have an indoor thing. What should we do? How should we do it? And Paul, luckily, somehow heard about it and said, well, you can do it here. And, it's going to be like a drive-in theater thing, and people are going to come in their car, they're going to drive through, they're going to get their thing, they're going to go. And when Paul was talking about it, oh, yeah, we're going to do this and that. And, because, of course, Mabel was the nurse, and I was just sitting there like, duh. I mean, so as Julie and I were talking even yesterday, I said, that's forever. We're going to host the nursing program thing here. We're going to work on that because we have a deep tie to nursing on the island. The nursing program here is really wonderful at the college, so we're going to work to try to build that forever and ever and make it just better and better all the time here on our property, and not so we can have an income stream or anything, but people will come here, maybe they'll become aware of here, more so they'll become really hyper aware of Miss Mabel and the wonderful work she did as an early pioneer, and so we're excited by that. And so that's just like some of those things are just like, oh, this is just happenstance that this sort of came together, but now this is going to be something that's really important for us to do. Similarly, just participating in community, we've been dabbling with the idea of establishing scholarships, so it might be related to nursing and Ms. Mabel. We provided some funds to Hanalei Initiative when they decided to redo the basketball court at Waioli Park. You may or may not know Waioli Park is actually our property. We lease it to the county for $1 a year, and the community has a wonderful park there. And the basketball court, up until 6 months ago or a year ago, was horrible. I wouldn't go out there myself, right? It's like 4-wheel drive. So now it's a beautiful redone court. We participated in helping give some money to that. So we're looking for these opportunities where we can maybe bring the right people to our properties for location, or do the right kinds of things for the right reasons, but not so much event reasons, because we don't have to do that anymore, and we're mindful that you gotta take it easy on the property here. It's 150 years old after all, so we're trying to be careful about that. And then the last part, which we really haven't got to yet, but we're going to, is sort of reviewing our experiences that we talk about and the history that we share, and what they are, what they mean, and why we're talking about them. But then also imagining what other kinds of things could we talk about with our collection and our history here. And I guess something that's come up in pandemic related to our big project was sort of like, well, who are we and why are we significant even? Aside from these things, this is a cool big old property in the middle of Lihue that no one's been to. Oh, that's cool. The mission house is wonderful, but who really are we? Well, I guess to me, I feel like we in our organization tell a few different stories and share a few experiences. One is about a family that came here as missionaries and then settled here and then became pretty prolific in the community and really, I think, impacted how the community is today. But also just that whole time of sugar, the growth and the boom of sugar, and most importantly, the people who then got involved in sugar and where they came from and who they are and what their cultures and traditions are and what their stories are. Because if you come here today and you just moved here and you look at the community, what you see here is because of that time. And the things that are happening here are because of that time, really. And much older. But there's a bunch of people who came and a bunch of tradition that came during the sugar era. And we can't rewrite that time. But a lot of what we do today in our community and what we see and what we experience is because of that. So, my vision would be, okay, we're going to do everything we're doing now, but we're also going to have some themed, more narrow experiences that really share about certain cultures or certain events or certain things that were plantation era type of stuff. And hopefully people then, especially our local residents, and maybe we'll take the visitors too, but the local residents have to remember those things so they can perpetuate into the future. That's a bit about what we did. We're extremely fortunate. We have some great board members that I think probably like most organizations, we met quite a bit during Zoom time during the pandemic for various reasons, and we're all sort of a little hungover from it and fatigued, but we're beginning to get back to it. And our next big trick is to identify what type of leader we need and then go out and try to recruit the next leader for our future, a new executive director, which would be different from the past directors, I think. You know, we've been a bit folksy and just a quiet community museum group, which we still are, but we have some great fortune, so it's like, well, who should we be trying to find? I don't know the answer yet. It's an interesting thing for us, though.
Fortunate. Questions for Sam?
Did I miss anything, Julie? Do you want to share more?
No, sorry.
I thought I would just respond. I think we've touched a couple of times in different aspects here, the importance of our organizations finding inroads and relevant touch points with the local community. So many of us are just awash with visitors, but I think COVID brought back an awareness, not only the opportunity to serve our local community, but to be meaningful, have meaningful touches with them, and that kind of reminds us why we're here, to then tell that story better, but to find deeper inroads as we have out at Kilauea Point, again, that had just been awash with visitors, to say, look at this beautiful place that many people hadn't been to since their second grade field trip. It's really hilarious and beautiful to have these folks come out and say, wow, the last time I was here, I remember my life cycle of the Albatross field trip, which my organization paid for your bus for, you know, all the way back when I was in the second grade. So to bring more families in, to have them appreciate these places that represent our community, and it takes intention, and it takes outreach, and it takes finding ways for the community to want to re-explore and re-envision our spaces.
Yeah.
And then what that can pay back in terms of recommendations to visitors certainly is a beautiful thing as well.
But I think it's important that the community takes ownership of these special places.
Yeah.
You know, all these institutions or the Valley Pond, these incredible places that Kauai has to offer, from plantation life to bird life, you know, out there, you know, and the lighthouse stories, you know, and but to have the community take ownership, it is the goal, because it is theirs. We're all there to serve. We're the stewards, and also what Sam was saying is, I like that part about, you know, events is not just to make money, or don't go with that in your mindset shouldn't even be there. It's about bringing the community in to experience, and it's a very common occurrence when they say, oh, I haven't been here since I was the second grade or whatever. That is every day, that is daily. The teachers come with the school kids, and they, listen, yeah, and we say stuff like that. You should go over to Grove Farm Museum too. When was the last time you've been there? So we all have to endorse each other. Yep. I think statewide, I think it's so important. I just found out that Wilcox helped create Lyman Museum. And if you've been there, if you haven't, it's beautiful, you know, from what it once was, you know. Anyway, so I just want to thank you for saying about events. It doesn't have to be about making money, but it's about having the community be part of it.
Some intention, yeah. I don't think we're saying that we're closed to events. We're being a little more mindful and intentional, is a good word, about the kinds of things and why. And,
yeah.
You know, we have that luxury for us. For a while, we were a little nervous. We didn't sew weddings and, you know, birthday parties or whatever. But now we're thinking about that and deciding, well, is that still important for people, or how should we proceed? So it's a time for our board to work on things like that. It's always good to review what you're doing and why you've been doing them, and are they still the right things or not?
Well, thank you for, you know, mentioning the board, and I forgot about that. You know, if you we really have a dynamic board, and just without them, you know, the backbone of our institutions, that, you know, if they support the vision of where it's going, it just makes the canoe go.
Yeah.
You know, if they support you. It's a challenge if not, but the board is so important. This is a shout out to the board, but thank you.
Yeah, right. It's really nice to have this gathering of people, you know. I think for a while we worked on our little thing and toiled away here and barely even talked to Chucky. I mean, Paul used to talk to him all the time, but, you know, I haven't been to the Lyman Museum, so I need to make that on my short list of things for a variety of reasons. One of them being relation, like family relation, but, you know, just to hear what other people are working on and struggling through, and we probably have common things, and, you know, it can either be very therapeutic or it can be very counseling, you know, for like, oh, well, we had that exact same problem, and here's what we did, who we called, and how we proceeded, and I just see an alliance being a really wonderful chance to, you know, trade stories a little bit about stuff like that and see if we can't raise the tide for all our votes.
Yeah.
So we're happy to have you here. I already told Frank, is there like a state conference? Because we want to have them here. You know, so he goes, oh yeah, there is. Are you sure about that? Well, maybe. I'm gonna have to review that one. But you know, I think Kauai has unique experiences and things that we could share. When the time is right, we can get back to having that.
You know, it's all good that you mentioned that, because prior to being part of HMA, it was very Oahu-centric, and they admitted that. And we whispered in the back at a meeting and says, so where's the Kauai reps? Where's the Molokai reps? You know, the other islands. And then, so the light went on. You know, and so, but there's still room for more representation from all the islands. It's not complete, but we're getting there.
Thank you for being part of that. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm a great member of that, because the time, it's so hard. You know. So I'm glad we have two reps, Frank and I, because if I'm not there, Frank is always there. Frank is our treasurer, and he's just an outstanding job as a treasurer. He has to be there forever.
Thank you, Chucky. Well, I'll be termed out.
Oh, no. I don't like that term out thing, this thing.
You know, I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to attend the Hawaii Museum Association, you know, roundtable discussion, but I'm here now, and I want to do it again. I want to do it, share with you my experience, which is what it was, to reopen the gate. And you know, when I read the theme, reopen the gate, we don't have any gates. We have no gates at Kokee. We have no gates at the state at the museum. We have no gates at CCC. We have no gates. So I'm thinking, oh, this is a metaphorical kind of thing, like reopen the gates. So fine, we reopened the gates, and when we opened that door, it just was tired, and it was dingy, and but it was COVID, and so we thought, what a great opportunity to clean her up. What a great opportunity to let her shine. The last time she was shining was in 1951. That was before I was born. That's a long time ago. So we did. Chris had the insight and the foresight to say, we're going to clean house, literally. We started from the bottom. We started with the empty shell, and all the helpers and all the partners came together to add the sparkle, to add what she truly could offer to all of us up the mountain. And it was just beautiful. So I couldn't be there in person, but I'm here now virtually. Thank you. Aloha, my name is Billy Smith, and I'm the president of Hui o Laka, a nonprofit organization located in Kokee State Parks. Before we reopen the gate, who is Hui o Laka? Let me explain. Hui o Laka was an idea that started in 1951 on the back of an envelope to establish a Hawaiian museum in Kokee, Kauai. The signatures of founders Isabel Faya, Joe Souza, and Ruth Knudsen-Hanner ensured that the interpretation and stewardship of Waimea Canyon and Kokee State Parks would continue. Our vision is simple: connecting the people with the spirit of Koke'e, and our mission, nurturing connections between the people and Koke'e through the interpretation and stewardship that engages all aspects of appreciation and service. Our name, Huiolaka, honors the goddess Laka and her interdependent relationship between the rainforest, flora, fauna, and animals. And by the way, Koke'e Museum is the oldest museum on Kauai. Huiolaka manages 4 state parks, the Koke'e Natural History Museum, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the Executive Director's residence. The sign that you see is part of an interpretive sign funded by HTA. Huiolaka is governed by the Board of Trustees. The staff consists of the Executive Director, Administrative Assistant, the Museum Sales Associates, Program Coordinator, and the CCC Camp Manager. Christine Faya was hired as Executive Director in January of 2015. She is holding the Huiolaka sign with the board members. An integral part of the reopening of the gates is Chris Faya's leadership style. Her approach to COVID was viewed as an opportunity for growth and to clean house. Chris reviewed Huiolaka's assets, cash, and inventory on hand prior to implementing the next steps. She is innovative, persistent, and a realistic leader, always looking for possibilities that lie ahead. Prior to COVID, our museum was open 365 days a year. 8,333 people visited the museum monthly, and sales averaged $35,000 a month. Membership, calabash donations, and grants accounted for additional financial resources. The executive director and the board realized the need for on-hand assets, so we applied for the Small Business Administration Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Disaster Injury Program, realizing close to $300,000. The museum associates were placed on furlough, roofs were repaired, and paving to the museum was completed. Relocating our collections of rocks, shells, and taxidermy animals to a secure location was the first thing we did for the museum to provide them a safe place to be. We also repaired and maintained the museum's interior. We reached out to partners and the community to kokua. We reinvented who we are and what we wanted visitors to notice and learn. Deep cleaning and relocation of exhibits had not occurred since we opened, so this was an opportunity to get it done. Our museum is an inviting, sparkling, dust and mold-free natural history museum. Prior to COVID, we sponsored 2 festivals, the Banana Polka Roundup to rid the forest of its invasive vines by making baskets, and Eo Emalani, tribute to Queen Emma and her trek to Kilohana with 100 hula dancers. Sadly to say, Banana Polka was canceled and Emalani became a virtual presentation. It was too bad because the small businesses that sponsored our festivals were no longer in operation. Finally, in July 2020, the gates opened for residents. They opened to the residents and families who crowded the meadow, museum, and hiking trails. Our museum was now open 4 days a week and shorter hours. Our exhibits connected the rainforest with natural history, and families were looking for experiential activities for their children. We started the Grab and Go Sundays, funded by Corteva Agriscience. Discovering the new museum was wonderful. The mountains, parks, and trails were uncrowded and quiet to revisit again. So as we reopened our museum, we thought about how are we going to move forward? What are the steps that we need to take now? One of the first things we did is we started replanting the Matheny plums. Mahalo to Corteva Agriscience, HTA, and HVB for funding to clear part of the CCC camp for the planting of the Matheny plums. Huiolaka recognizes the role we play regarding cultural traditions. Trout fishing, pig goat and deer hunting, picking maili and mokihana, plums, peaches, or lilikoi, or just hanging up in the mountain. So as we moved forward, another activity that we needed to work on was the nature trail renovation. And right now, we've really been thinking about how are we going to reopen the CCC camp. The nature trail was restored and supported by HTA. The state installed interpretive signs to educate and enhance the koke'e experience. Open spaces were welcomed after being cooped up for so long. At the CCC camp, the mokihana and orchard cabins reopened, and we hired a camp manager. A relay system with Wi-Fi was installed for state parks and Huiolaka use. Presently, our greatest challenge is the reopening of the CCC camp, barracks, and the mess hall. We will be limiting the number of guests and the use of the kitchen. So, after we started to reopen our gate, what did we learn from this experience? We learned most importantly, that Huiolaka vision and mission is thriving. We haven't quite met our operational income prior to COVID, but each day brings more visitors and closer to meeting our costs. The transformation of the museum encourages exploration of natural history, and our greatest asset is protecting that history. Community partners, volunteers, and members have stepped up and are valuable in moving us forward. The value of keeping our members informed through quarterly newsletters strengthen their commitment, volunteerism, and donations. Visitors are spending more time in the museum. The most popular exhibits are the shell collection, Wai'ale'ale rain gauge, sandalwood, and the CCC storyboards. Kids run into the museum to see the pig, deer, and goats on display. Pick out a junior ranger vest and binoculars, then head out to go on a hike. I've been a Huiolaka board member since the 80s and spend as much time as I can at Mauka. So do my children and my grandchildren. I believe that our wilderness areas provide inspiration, contentment, and pausing from the everyday craziness of our lives. So, I invite everyone to take a ride up Mauka, inhale the essence of the rainforest, embrace the songs of our native birds, feel the mist upon your face, and connections to your soul. The mountains are calling.
And can you give us a little story about what you're doing out at Halipuna?
Should I talk about challenges or just hopes and dreams?
A little bit of who you are, what you're doing, where you are, and also the challenges involved in restoring a historic home and getting that up and running, let's say.
Okay. So our nonprofit is called Halipuna. It was founded by Jim Valentine, who is sixth generation. He's a member of the Faya family. He was born in the dispensary in Waimea. There's still some people left on island who were born in the dispensary. And he's come back. He worked in the movie business for a while and has come back to semi-retire on the island. And he's now managing Koke Lodge. And he bought Gulick Rural Mission House from some family members with the intention of restoring it and turning it into some kind of community center for Waimea to help bring more people to the area. And by bringing more people to the area, this would help businesses in the area. A lot of people, as you know, drive to see Waimea and Koke'e, and they kind of just fly by Waimea. I think that's changing now. You see a lot more businesses now in the area, but that's the intention. The house itself, I mean, I think when we started, we thought, oh, maybe we can get it done for $600,000. And then it was $1 million.
And then we got the historic structures report, and then it was 1.5 million. And then we got some more quotes from local contractors, and it's 2.5 million. And now with the rise in construction costs, we're looking at 3 million, we think. And I think what's amazing about this house is, so I told you about Glenn Mason, the restoration architect. He thinks it's one of the 5 most significant structures on the islands. And part of the reason for that is because when they built it using local materials. And some of them weren't sustainable, so they stopped doing it. So there's a lot of ohia. And I'm sure, so someone mentioned ohia in this house, but was it the floors, Sam?
The floors in the main house, yeah.
So they had to go, it was built in 1831. They had to go all the way up into Kokee to find an ohia that was straight enough. And then, they had to cut it down by hand. Most of this work is being done by Hawaiians, right? They had to hire local people. So cut it down by hand, drag it down the mountain, and I'm sure it would have been done the way they cut the trees when they were, they had to pull it down to build the canoes, the va. So I'm sure the Hawaiians knew how to do this, but it would have come a long way, bring it to the site. They then cut, it's called beach rock. It's coral sandstone that has built up on the beaches on the west side. And they cut blocks out, and Deborah Kapule, the last queen of Kauai, she lent her oxen to drag these coral blocks up to the house, to the site. And then if you look at the basement floor, so it has a basement. Not many houses in Hawaii have a basement, because I asked the architect, why would they have built a basement? He said, that's what they did in New England, so they did it here. And you look at this floor, and it's notched in these amazing ways, and it looks like Waimea Ditch or the fish pond. So we don't know who built the floor for certain, but I'm convinced it's, again, Native Hawaiians who would have been really excellent stone workers. They knew how to work stone with limited tools. So this house is a very special place, but it really, I've talked to some contractors, and they look at me and they say, you sure you don't want to just tear it down? The site itself is valuable. And like, no, there's so many stories behind this place. There's so much we could do with this place as a resource for the people, for the community. So it's just the challenge, I think, of getting that story out to the people, because even the community is still a little bit confused as to what this place is. It was lived in until 2003 by, I think, their plantation manager's wife. The manager had died. I think his name was Ramp, and somebody. Anyway, that was something like that. But it was lived into 2003, which is an unusual story for a historic building. Most historic buildings have not been lived in. And I think the other challenge, yes, we are focused on the money, we need the money, but I think actually it's the people. So hearing about they have an amazing booth, and I think that's what I'm struggling with, is getting the message out to people, and then finding people who want to participate in this, because everybody's stretched, everybody's tired, everybody's on a million boards, and they're willing to help. They call me if they need help. Unfortunately, a lot of the work is specialty work, so we can't ask people to pull a java plum tree or anything or even I volunteer for the fish pond restoration, and we'll go and pull up the invasive mangrove seedlings. We really just need people who are willing to sit through meetings and make telephone calls and do social media, which I hate doing, and young people to do that. So that's our main challenge, I'd say.
Thank you. Questions or Ed? Well, I have one. Ed, what's your budget? What's your annual budget?
to the board, the food security and local food production is very important to the board as well. So yeah, that's about it.
If I could, also a excellent lunch, and breakfast and dinner in Coquet Lodge often with produce
From
from
yeah.
much appreciated. Questions, please, for anybody?
Oh, Sam, I was wondering if you folks ever talked about, I don't think there's space at the museum to do this, but have you ever talked about, because we did speak to Stephanie Iona about building residential property on our property because housing is such an issue, and then you can house your own employees. It's an out of the box idea, but I don't know if you guys ever took that idea further.
So did we just talk about that yesterday at all?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. We do have housing, right, out in at Wyoming Mission House, there's a caretaking cottage where Barbie and Roger Kennedy live, and they caretake, and Mama will do the same thing, there's a caretaker place there, and Helen and Kelly Franklin live there, and caretaking property. Here, we have Captain Camp, which is, on the back stretch there, it's like coming in, you go down there, and the camp exists, and as we heard earlier from Mercy, that was sort of an add-on to the campus. It was, bought, and there it is. And just yesterday, I was talking with Julie about various things in the light of not being able to attract our masters in museum science employee, and how do we do this, and I told Julie that when I'm at home with my glass of wine and social media, and I'm surfing along, lately in my Instagram more and more, there's been tiny home things coming up. Because I click on one and then they show me two, and then I click on two, and then they show me 8. But I've been screenshotting a few of those and storing them away because some of them are very interesting for housing, and it's, maybe partially here, but also on the Florida Island School. It's like, when you hire an educator who's a first-time educator or a young family, some of them would live in a room the size of a container with the proper things, and that could work, and same thing here. And then I started telling Julie, what if we tried to let the market know that we're looking for old things like what, Mike Faya has worked on, and Faya has worked on that White Bunch Cottage, and they get the old cottage transferred over there and mix it up. We could do some more of that, and it would look like it was always here. We don't have a ton of real estate for it. We do, really. We have the whole valley out there, but we could add a few more, and then the question becomes, well, which employees get it, which don't, what's the deal? It's a little tricky. I have at least one board member who said we should be out of the residential business. We don't want to do that. It's complicated. Who gets it? Why? How much do you charge? Is it taxable or not? But housing is so wild these days. So I think it has to be on our radar. Even if we conclude that it's too complicated, we better review it, because even as we try to find a really qualified and solid executive director person, what if we had a decent executive director home somewhere, kind of like the school has a headmaster's house or a president's house of a college? It has a lot of uses, not just to have a place to live, but you can use that for the entertaining of the highest level of your clientele or your vendors, whatever. So we're mindful of that. I don't think we have any conclusions about it. We already have some housing going on. We'll say that we do spend 10 to 20% of our weekly get-together talking about that housing, not always celebrating. There's challenges that come with it. So just if you get to that point, then making sure it's intentionally set up in such a way that it's beneficial to the nonprofit and the employees too, but really the nonprofit is the mission of the nonprofit is the guiding principle. I told Julie that over at UH, I'm aware, if you're a young educator at UH, there are some housing opportunities there, but it's not forever. It's 2 or 3 years or something like that, and they expect that in that time you matriculate into the greater community and find your own housing, and the next 7 new people can then come. It's a landing place, if you will. So I don't know. We have some people who lived on this property for more than 50 years. And then we have some people that are clamoring to get in and we're struggling like who, why, and how.
Thank you.
Good question. Yeah, I mean, you could probably construct some tiny homes with plain wood that look old, but they would be, and I have a few pictures of, like I say, it's just like a big container where there's a bedroom at one end, a kitchen at the other, and a few things in between, like a few spaces, and some people would love that, just for an opportunity to work with our organizations and live in this community. It's not for everyone.
Now, maybe you've not said anything else, anything yet? Comments?
You've done a really good job. I mean, we've all come through this time, and I think everybody, I'm excited to see the opening of the museum in November. I hope you get there and make it big, right? Go big or go home. Personally, like everyone. You have the big park, that whole area there. Yes. Bring the community to you. They need to see that. We're one of the venues because everything else is closing. So you either go to someone's personal home, or the beach, or the hotel. Then comes us, and then the neighborhood centers. So during COVID, we did still host some of the groups that were there coming on a regular basis, as long as they followed COVID protocol. And right now we have 3 church congregations that come. I'm kind of happy with that because now I don't have to do parties on Sundays, to see to the church to have the space. But that's sort of our revenue right now is to rent the hall area and our conference rooms. And we just finished renovating all of our conference rooms, which are all the carpets and non-cut tiles, so people can eat in there now. Before it's like no eating, no drinking. Everybody has to go out. So that's happening now. We're slowly refurbishing our kitchen and our bathrooms, and then we'll go into the hall. So that's on the center side where I'm the money maker. As far as the museum, we continue to continue our renovations, and our mission is to educate our resident people here first. So before we closed down, we did have our cocoons come through. Some of the school science or history come through, and so we hope to continue to do that, and at no charge. We really haven't been charging at all anyway. It's all in donations when we come in. So whatever you can suggest for us to do better, then it'll be a plus for us to do.
So I think you can get into the electronic age also. We'll have monitors, and we're going to have a small library, and monitors and stuff, and to tell a few stories.
So we had to tear down our custom-made wooden cabinetry because of termites. So right now it's going to look very sterile because we went into glass and metal display cabinets. So any suggestions to make it look like vintage? Besides our light bulbs, we've got vintage light bulbs now.
Do you have a gift shop?
We have small items and we will have more. A cookbook is on the way. It's in the planning right now, and we do have some veterans who are very handy in woodwork, so they'll be making some stuff like
wonderful idea.
Yeah. So that is the plan. But
I'm asking because I think at Cookie Museum, the gift shop is probably the main revenue source. That's the case at Cookie Lodge.
yes.
And I don't know about Hawaii. The gift shop.
It is a form of, it is, but it's not the main,
Okay.
not the main, but it is. It is the main part. It's important, because they are a book collection.
And I'd say the same for Okay, Museum, the books are very important to us. Revenue generator.
Very consistent.
Okay, interesting.
I think we've talked a couple of times as well, but just leading into that, the flip side for me, which was a lot of where I put my energy through COVID, was gathering the stories of who we are as an organization, why we're here, and what we do. And by putting energy, which takes a lot of energy, and all the organizations that are stretched to put into social media, websites, newsletters, all those things that tell our story are very time intensive. And for my organization, it's me, but I'm doing that. But the end result of that is the strengthening of the understanding from our followers of why we're here and what we do and the outcomes for their support has had a direct correlation to increased fundraising revenue. And so I'm a fundraiser and a communicator by organization. That's my professional history, and so that's where I put my energy. And I can attest that it is time intensive, but it does make a difference. People understand you better, they're more willing, and they have a heart space before you ask them for support. And so you've built a relationship with them over time, and it can have definitely a positive outcome. But gathering those stories and being clear about who you are can make a big difference to building your sense of community, the honor for your organization. And my supporters are across the country because people come once or twice a year to visit Kilauea Point as one of our entry points. And our newsletter maintains that relationship across the year. And so, anyway, I affirm that it's a good place to put energy in whatever capacity, whether it's just a pamphlet or a social media or more than that, because it can make a difference.
I had the opportunity to kind of watch the raw edit of the presentation for that day. And, you know, as I listened to the speakers speak proudly of their institution they're with, I thought to myself, we're more alike than anything else. Our job is to have that slice of Kauai, present it the way that we present it, invite people to join us. And I was kind of very happy. I was happy and sad because I couldn't be there with these people who have worked so hard, as I have, to make their organization shine and to present it to the people and call them back. But I was able to see that we're very similar in what our intention is and in bringing our community and our families and our children to experience what we have to offer, from the mountain to the sea, every place of the island. For a small island, we have a lot of different museums and cultural things to offer to our families and to the community and to our visitors. We're very, very, very fortunate.
Well, I want to thank you, Frank, for bringing us together again.
Well, thank you. Lisa will be in a moment, but it's important for the Hawaii Museums Association to gather people together in the profession to discuss the challenges and the successes that we've all had over the last couple of years. I hope that at least every year we're able to get together on this island, whether or not it's an unofficial or official event of the HMA. This is an important role for us in the community, in the museum community.